Hi everybody, my name's Greg Hennessy. Today we're going to learn about a little bit about spreadsheeting. I've been a game designer for about 20 years, and I found that spreadsheets are one of the best design tools out there, one of the best game development tools out there, and they're super daunting if you don't know anything about them, and I feel like not a lot of people learn about them. One of the things I was afraid of going into it is like, oh my God, do I need to know math? Yes, I think at some point you do, but I'm going to tell you this: I failed high school math. I was terrible at math, and spreadsheets and video games kind of helped me get better at that. And so I believe if it's in me, it's in you too. So I encourage you to try it out. It's not for everybody, but I appreciate you following along. There are two tools you can use for spreadsheeting. So there's Google Sheets and there's Microsoft Excel. Google Sheets is free and available to everybody, and I think it's better usable, more usable, and also just better overall, in my opinion, having used both for a really long time. Um, so I encourage you to go start a new Google Sheet. Pause this video right now. I'll wait for you, and then we can get started, and we'll dive into it right from the very beginning. So I'm gonna go over to my spreadsheet now. So here we are. I'm first thing I'm doing is I'm naming mine up. If you click into this here, Fantasy Economy Spreadsheet. Um, and why I'm calling it that is because today what we're going to do is a bunch of things. The first thing is look at this really daunting interface together, and I'm going to help guide you through what it all means. The second thing I'm going to do is start to pretend like we're making a game together. So we're going to be making a medieval sort of fantasy game like The Witcher or something like that. And we're going to be sort of pretending there are three towns in this game, and they're going to sell you things at these towns. We're going to start to set up what sort of a really basic structure for this kind of thing would look like, and kind of get into some of the very basics to sort of next steps of spreadsheets. So the first thing is like, what is a spreadsheet? What are you even looking at? Like, if you've never looked at a spreadsheet before, you've opened this up and gone like, ugh. Um, you've got your basic sort of menu up here with various things you can do. You can do. Don't worry too much about that yet. And then you've got another sort of bar here that gives you a bunch of easy access, ready to access sort of functionality you're going to use a lot over and over and over again. And yeah, so that's the structure of what it is. And then you've got the sheet down here itself. Um, and you've got this sort of thing that I'm going to call like a function bar right here. Um, and so let's get into what this is. So a spreadsheet really is a matrix or an array of data. All it is that you're just basically selecting these things. These are called cells. So you're going to select cells and you're going to put data in cells. That's all you're going to do. That's what it is, and then you're going to manipulate that data to figure out other information. So manipulating data looks like maybe doing some math on it or looking up various pieces of data that you want to make sure that you're looking at the right things. And we're going to get into all of that, but today let's just start with the very basics. So what do you even do? Um, so the first thing is I'm going to talk about cells and cell references. So when I click on this cell, the very first one, the top left, um, I can refer to the cell by its column letter and its row number. So columns are always lettered. They go all the way over to the right. And really, you can just make tons and tons and tons of columns. They'll handle that. You'll see in the future. Well, don't worry about that too much now. And the same thing for rows. Like rows really go on forever as well. So this cell here is cell A1, and you can see that because it's the reference and the name of it is here. So A4, A1, etc. And I'm gonna just select a cell, and I'm gonna start coming up with some basic sort of like fantasy resources. So we're gonna say that there's gonna be like iron. We're gonna sell. Let's do like metals. We're gonna have silver, and if I push enter, it's going to select the cell beneath the next one. So it's going to go one row down. I'm going to have gold. Enter. Goes to the next cell down. I'm going to have platinum. Enter. Goes to the next cell down. And lastly, we're going to go to mithril. So these are the things that we're going to be selling in our fantasy world. Um, So the next thing I'm going to show you is just kind of manipulating some of this information, like moving it around. So I'm going to select all of these things. So I'm going to click in cell A1 and drag down to A5. And I'm going to actually just click on the edge right here, and you can see a little hand appears. And I'm going to shift it down and let go. And cool, so it's all down there now. And why I've done that is because we're going to start making what I call a table. So whenever you're working in a spreadsheet for yourself and for other people, you're going to want it to be really easy to read and understand. So when you make tables, tables are going to have like headers, and then they're going to have information under those headers, and they're going to have rows, and there's going to be information in those rows. And so we're going to use this first row here for our headers. So what is this? We're going to just call this resource type. Great. So now that I'm looking at this stuff, I know it's resource type. And you can also like go into your rows and your columns here, and you can click on the edge and you can drag it to resize them. Sometimes this is helpful if you have lots of information in the cells. So the next thing I'm going to show you is how to format stuff a little bit, how to make it look nice and look super readable. So usually for a header, I'm gonna bold it. So you can do that by pushing Control B, or you can come up here and click on bold here. The nice thing is if you hover, it shows you the hotkey for it, which is Control B as well. And I like to make mine green, so I'm gonna come up to this fill color, and I'm gonna go light green here. Awesome. So now it's really easy to tell that's my header, and this is the information under it. The next thing I want to do in the next column over is let's set a price. Let's pretend, what we're going to be saying is that a shop is going to be selling these resources, and how much are they worth? Like what is the value in this world for each piece? So we're going to say something like gold cost per piece. So for 1 iron, how much gold does it take? So the next thing is like, okay, every time I create a header, I want it to look like this. Um, doing it manually can get a little bit laborious. So there's some shortcuts here. The first thing is if you come back to this cell, you can push Control C to copy the data, and you'll see when you've copied the data, there is a little dotted line that goes around it just to show it's copied. I could put it in any cell and Control V to paste if I wanted to. But what I'm actually going to do is it's copied a bunch of things. So we'll get into what all of those things are in the future, but one of the things that it's copied is the formatting. So if I push Control Alt and V, it's actually just going to paste the formatting, and that's going to make your life a lot easier for like repeat formatting things. So the gold cost for every piece is let's just go through that. Let's say iron's really cheap. Let's say for 0.1 gold you can buy an iron. So that means for 10 pieces of iron you'll spend 1 gold. Silver is going to be let's say it's half a gold. Gold's going to be 1 to 1. So for one, you can buy 1 piece of gold for 1 gold. Platinum is going to be 2 pieces, and mithril is going to be 5 pieces. So I personally prefer when this data is centered, number values. It's easier for me to read. So what I just did is I selected this entire column, just where this I could select this whole column. I don't want that right now. I just want this data, this range. This is what it's called. And I'm going to come up here and I'm going to center that data. Awesome. So we've done that. So we figured out the cost of gold, or cost of each of these resources in gold. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to have 3 towns. And those towns are going to sell sort of between a range of a minimum and a maximum amount of these resources every day. So we're going to start to set that up. So let's say that like town, we'll just call them town 1, 2, and 3 for now. So we're going to say town 1 minimum and town 1 maximum. Town 1 max. And then we'll figure out a range. So town 1's going to sell, let's say iron's really easy to come by here. So 10 to 20 iron every day. And it's not always going to have the same amount. So every day you come to that shop, it's going to have a different amount of iron to sell you. And silver is going to have let's say it's going to have something like 1 to 10 silver. 1 to 10 silver. So silver's a little more rare, but still fairly plentiful. Gold's going to have 1 to 3. So the other thing you'll notice here actually is you can click in cells, but you can also navigate with the arrow keys. So I'm really just using my arrow keys now, and as you get good at spreadsheeting, you're going to use your arrow keys a lot to just kind of select things quickly. So platinum, let's say that this town doesn't get a lot of platinum, and it's going to be from 0 pieces to 1 piece every day of platinum that it's going to have available. And finally, mithril. I'm going to say that this town has no mithril, just not near mithril, so 0 to 0. That's the range. So now we want these to look like this. So I'm going to just select this row and Control C, and I'm going to select these, and I'm going to go Control Alt V, and it's just going to paste that formatting again. Beautiful. Um, and I'm going to actually, so another thing that I do while I'm formatting to make things readable is I like, sets of data to stand out. So this column kind of makes sense, this makes sense, and I want, because these are both town 1, I want them to stand out a little bit as different. So I'm going to come back in here, and I'm still going to keep it green, but I'm going to make it like a little darker green. Cool. Okay. So let's really quickly, you can follow along or pause and do it yourself, um, make town 2 and town 3. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just copy these two. So I'm going to select horizontally this range, basically these 2 cells, and I'm going to select this cell in column E and paste. And then I'm going to just double click in here, go town 2, select the cell. You can also change it up here in the function if you want. Delete that town 2, and same here for town 3. Great. And again, because I want these to kind of stand out as a collection, I'm gonna make that lighter green again. And now you can see that town 2 and town 3 kind of stand out as independently. And I'm gonna give these some values as well. So let's go through this together. Iron for town 2, I'm gonna do 15 to 30. I'm gonna say it has a lot of iron here. I want silver to be, let's say, 1 to 3. It's going to have less silver. Gold's going to be like 2 to 5. Let's say. Platinum, we can go with, this town is a little more 1 to 2. And mithril is going to be 0 pieces to 1 piece. And then town 3, I'm going to go with 1 to 10 pieces of iron. So it actually doesn't have that much here. I'm going to say it has 3 to 8 silver. Gold's going to be 1 to 8. Platinum, let's say, doesn't have a lot of platinum. Let's say 0 to 1 again. And no, let's go 0 to 3 just to have fun with that one. There's a bit of a spectrum. Some days it could have nothing, and some days it could have lots. And then with mithril, let's go with 1 to 3. It's also mithril rich. Now I want these to be sort of formatted the same. I'm just going to center them like that. Great. Beautiful. So what you're looking at is what I call a table. And that means a lot of things, and we'll get into it later. But basically, you've got a set of information here. You've got this array. If I select all of this, this is an array, a set of information that's related to each other in some significant way. So you'd be using this to like balance your game economy and to learn stuff. So the next thing I'm going to do is teach you about different sheets and data validation. So those are meaty words. Let's dig in. So the first thing is every time you start a new spreadsheet, you'll see sheet 1 here by default. If you double click on this, you can rename it. I'm going to call this like economy lookup. So whenever I want to look up data about the economy, I'm going to come into this sheet. And then I'm going to create a new sheet. If I click on this plus sign down here, it creates a new sheet. And I'm going to call this one validation. And I almost always have a lookup and a validation in my spreadsheets while I'm working. And I'll teach you about what that means. So validation really is just a way of making sure that your data is clean. So what that means is like where, I have iron, silver, gold, platinum, and mithril. If I were to be typing these lots throughout my spreadsheet and relying on those to reference each other, and I typed iron like iron somewhere, that means my data is not clean. It's bad because I can't relate those two things to each other easily when we start doing more complicated things. So you'll see that down the road. But right now, I want to make sure that there is a way of making sure it's always consistent. So I'm going to create basically a drop-down menu here where you can select each resource and you can put that all throughout your spreadsheet everywhere you want it and make sure that it's always referring to the same piece of data so that iron is always iron and it always is spelled the same way and looks the same way. So we're going to do that in the validation sheet. So if we come over here, we're gonna start here by saying like resource type, and I'm going to bold that and I'm going to make it green. And then the resource types that we have, I'm actually just going to come back here and I'm going to copy this range. So I'm going to select iron to mithril, Control C, see the dotted line copying it, and then come back here and in cell A2, I'm going to push Control V, and there they are. Then I'm going to come back here, select that range again, and push Delete. Goodbye. Um, so now what I want is to create a drop down from this data set. And how I can do that is if you click in the cell and you come up to data at the top here, the data menu, you can look through that. There's a whole bunch of stuff in here that can be really helpful. But the one we want is called data validation. So I'm going to click on that and it's going to open this sort of menu on the side. And I'm going to add a rule. And by default, it's going to say it's going to apply to a range. So now remember when I talked about references. So cell A2 is a reference. Um, you can refer to sheets between various sheets as well. So here it's saying refer to the economy lookup sheet in single quotations, which means the sheet, not the validation sheet. We're looking here, and it's applying this to this range, and the range is A2, and yeah, this is the range. Actually, we could pick this whole range here actually. If I picked that and went OK, it's going to apply it to the whole range. So what I did there is I clicked on this select data range and then selected all the cells where I want these drop downs to appear, which is in economy lookup. Exclamation mark means just separates the sheet reference and the cell reference and the range reference. And then A2 to A6. So the colon means from this cell to this cell. And I'm going to hit OK. So the next thing is you see we have the criteria dropdown. We could just start adding things like gold in here or silver and then add more references. But this is not the way, this is not really a good, necessarily scalable way to manage your data. This might make sense somewhere way down the line. It might not make any sense right now, but just trust me and let's go with it. So I'm gonna click on the criteria and I'm gonna say drop down from a range instead. And so just like before, this is looking for a range similar to this one. But I want the range from validation. So I'm going to click on this, select data range. And it really wants me to put something in here. But what we can do is just select it with our cursor and it will fill it in. So I'm going to click on the validation tab and I'm going to select these rows. And I don't want to select the first one because I don't want that to appear in the dropdown ever. It's just not a thing I need to be there. So what we're seeing here is that we're selecting the validation sheet, separating the range with an exclamation mark, and then we're selecting A2 to A6, column A2 to A6. And I'm going to hit OK. And look at that, it populated it with our items here. So the next thing that's really cool that Google Sheets can do pretty easily is I can change the color. So I'm going to give iron like a black color, silver can stay silver, gold can be yellow, platinum can be, I don't know, this kind of weird green color, and mithril can be purple because it's kind of magical. So then I'll hit done. Boom. Okay, we're going to come back to economy lookup. And then when I click on these, you'll see that I can just select that data here. So always be consistent, no matter where I put it. Um, I will pick the same things. So we're going to go iron, silver, gold, platinum, and mithril. And if I ever wanted that anywhere else, an easy way to do that is if I go Control C, Control V, that'll just put that same drop down there. And I'm going to, oops, just undo that, delete that, Control Z. Okay, whew, that's a lot. That's a little bit more than just the basics. Um, but we're going to keep going. So take a breather if you need it. Go get a drink. Um, let your brain kind of digest that, and then we can come back and keep going. So the next thing I want to do, if I'm actually building a game economy, is I want to just quickly know what the average sort of amount of each of these resources that shops would sell every day, and the total average. So like how much on average every day would I be able to buy if I was a really good player, let's say, and I could travel around to all 3 cities, 3 towns every day and get everything. What's the total average I would get? So we're going to start setting up a new table, and really there's two methods that we're gonna use here. Let's go, and so I'm going to call this method 1. And this is the more basic method, and it's going to show you some next sort of like stages of spreadsheeting. Um, and and then we'll go from there. And actually, I'm going to pause here. Before we get too far into this, I'm going to just show you some wacky stuff. We're just going to play. This is not real stuff. We're just going to play. Um, so one of the important things about spreadsheets is that they can do calculations. You can run functions on things. So if you've ever scripted or programmed, you'll know that a function kind of looks like, you'd start the function name like add, and then you'd have a bracket, and then you put some variables in there, and you close it. Excel is exactly the same, and it comes full, or sorry, Google Sheets and Excel and spreadsheets in general come full of functions that you can use. And how you start using these functions is if you push equals, and you'll see like a little sort of caret or something telling you something's about to happen comes in there. And you can start typing stuff in, almost anything you want. And you'll start to see like suggested functions appearing. I'm going to use a really basic one. We're going to use sum. So sum is just adding things together. So I'm going to type in sum, and I'm going to just click on it actually. Click on the first one in the list. Cool. Okay, it's waiting for me to do more. Sorry, my headset went funky there. Um, and I'm going to start adding numbers together. So I'm going to just now select by pressing on this cell here, C2, and you can see the reference goes in C2, and because these letters are yellow, this cell is also yellow, just to help you kind of guide. And when you've got like lots of different cells selected, this becomes really helpful. And I'm going to close the bracket and just hit enter. So it's adding 10 with nothing. So it says 10. But the thing that's important here, that if you click on the cell again, is you'll see the outcome of that function in the cell. But you can see the function itself up here. And I often like to drag this down in case you have like more complex functions and additions and things that we'll get into in the future. But that's basically it. And actually, I'm gonna come in here and I'm gonna edit this function. So if you click on the question mark, or if you push F1, what it says is basically you can comma separate values, and you can put almost as many as you want in there. So I'm going to close this. So I'm going to comma separate, and I'm going to add, I'm going to put this in here. So D2, reference D2. And so it's going to add 10 and 20 together now. So if I hit enter, I get 30. Again, if I select that cell, you can see the sort of operation happening up here, and you can see the outcome down here. What's really cool is like if I wanted to kind of keep that operation going to each of these values here, I can actually just click on this cell, and in this little dot in the bottom right corner, click on that and drag that down. I'm going to drag it down by 1. So when I've done that, it actually moved the references down by 1 as well. This is really helpful as you're working with large volumes of data and you want to start repeating a lot of information. It's a little bit tricky to learn how to work with these references, and there's some special things you can do. I'm going to show you one special thing right now. So I'm going to just delete that, and I'm going to come back into here. So let's say that I wanted to add each of these, every item in here, every value in here, with 10 and just 10, and I'd never want that reference to change. So I'm going to come back into here, and I'm going to click on C2. So it's referencing that cell, and I'm going to push F4. And so what that does is it puts a $ in front of the column letter and the row number. And what that means is that it's making it absolute. It means that when I drag this down, neither the column nor the row will change. And so we can test that out. So if I push enter and I drag this down, you're going to see 20. So that's showing me that C2 and is being added with D3 now. And I'm going to drag it down again. What do you think is going to happen? It's 13 because C2 and D4. The other interesting thing is if I drag it over this way, it's going to do the same thing. So it's going to preserve C2, but it's actually going to add it with 15 because I didn't lock that reference. If I instead delete that and come here and I push F4 again, I'm locking the reference. That means it's always going to add 10 and 20 together. I don't want that. What I'm going to do instead is push it F4 again, and now it's saying lock row 2 and column, but leave column D unlocked. So if I push enter and I drag it over this way, it's adding 10 and 15 together. But I can drag it down and it's always locking those references. The row is never changing. That's a lot. You don't have to remember that all right now. Just remember that you can use F4 if you want to lock a reference. It's kind of an advanced thing. We're going to be doing it lots. So get used to it. Think about it, practice it, try stuff out, play with it, and just see what happens. So what we want to do is basically get the average of each town now. So next step. So what I'm going to do is actually just copy this whole range. I'm going to copy this resource type to the cell here, and I'm going to say, this is method 1, and this is going to be the average here. And we're going to say town 1, town 2, town 3, and total. So let's do some formatting. I'm going to make all of these light green and bold. And I'm going to make this up here dark green and bold. And I'm actually going to merge these cells. So just, you don't have to do this, but if you want to make things look nice, what I'm going to do is select all of these. And up here, I'm going to select merge cells. And so that's just kind of combine them all into one cell. You can see B8 to E8 basically all contain average, and it displays it to you as if they were one cell. So the next thing we want to do is get the average of each of these resources for town 1. So again, we're going to use a function. We're going to use the average function. So I'm going to hit enter or equal signs, and then I'm going to start typing in average. And you can see here it comes up. So I'm going to put that in, and I'm going to give it a range. So while you can comma separate things just like the sum, I'm actually going to give it a range instead. So I'm going to say, going to click, hold, and drag these two. So what you're seeing is C2, comma, D2. That means this between C2 and D2. Grab all of that information. And I'm going to close it and hit enter, and it's going to give me 15. That's right. So between 10 and 20 is 15. And it's suggesting to do more for me here, and I'm not going to do it. We're going to do this manually. I'm going to do it the hard way, just for learning. So again, I'm going to do the same thing, equal signs, average, and you'll see it really wants to help you. Like it kind of pre-filled it with that for you because it's like, well, that cell up there did that. Do you think you want something similar here? It can get really helpful. So I'm gonna do the same thing there. Awesome. Cool. The next thing that I'm going to show you is another way of sort of like doing that information and doing it a little bit more quickly. And this is where, when we were pushing F4 and doing the references, this stuff starts to come into play to make sure that the right things are being changed and not other things. So I'm going to select this little, this cell here, and I'm going to select the little dot in the corner, and I'm going to just drag it down all the way to the mithril, and it's going to just repeat that function for me. But it's gonna take the next row down for each reference. If I kept doing it, it would get real funky because and show this like divide by 0 because there's not real data down here and doesn't know what's happening. So I'm going to just delete that. And we're going to do the same for the rest here. So let's do town 2, and I'm going to do equals average, and I'm going to average these two values, enter. It wants to autofill. We're not going to do that. I'm going to show you something else. So another way of doing it, you could drag this down, or now because I've got a data set here already and it's kind of formed a pattern, I can actually just double click on this little circle, and it's going to fill that data down for me. Nice. And we're going to do the same thing for town 3 equals average. And we're going to select, not those four, these two, enter, and fill it down. Awesome. Okay, now I want the total daily average. So I'm going to just go equals again, and I'm going to sum. And it already tells me what I want to do, which is great. I want to add all of those three values together. So every day in the world, on average, 43 iron are available for sale. That's really useful information for balancing your game. And I'm going to drag this down as well, or double click to fill down. And you can see, on average, how much is available. That doesn't necessarily mean that a player is going to buy all of them, but that means how much they could buy potentially. And we can start to work with all of that later. So there you go. There's the basics of spreadsheeting. That's a lot. Play around yourself. If you want to invent a different type of economy that's not based on metal, go for it. If you want to have something different than towns, do that. Give it a shot. I'm going to make a second video soon, and we're going to talk about a different way to approach this, a little bit more of a complex and scalable way. We're going to start getting into the meat of spreadsheets. But for now, this is the basics. Stick with this and play around. Remember, you got this. You don't need a ton of math yet, and this, even at this level, I hope is helpful. Thanks so much for hanging out and learning to get the basics of spreadsheets with me.